With CM Punk and Bryan Danielson likely to appear in AEW, we are potentially on the verge of pro wrestling history. Let's be honest, none of us thought we would ever be here again. Where is here? Here is a world where the WWE has a legitimate, big-time, financially backed threat nipping at their heels and ready to snatch up a significant portion of the mainstream public mindshare when it comes to pro wrestling. Sure, there was a time when WCW was on top and your uncle could name off Goldberg and Sting, but the general population still associates a handful of wrestlers and one company as the monolith of the industry. But that could actually change, and maybe a lot sooner than we think. I'm Rivenblade, and today I'm looking at how CM Punk and Bryan Danielson are about to bring their journeys and the wrestling world full circle. Okay, just a quick history lesson before we hit the main point of this video. So, after WWE bought WCW in 2001, some wrestling fans were pretty bummed out. It felt like the end of an era, and like mainstream pro wrestling would never be the same, doomed to be presented in one way by one company through one man's esoteric lens. A segment of fans felt deflated during this time as WWE arguably bungled the invasion angle, and despite the company continuing to do well for themselves in terms of viewership, there was a segment of fans that dropped off during this time and either walked away from wrestling completely or sought an alternative. Enter Ring of Honor in 2002. Sure, their crowds were only a few dozen or a few hundred people, but to those who were watching closely, Ring of Honor was special, and it was the lightning rod that many North American independent wrestling companies looked to for leadership and inspiration. It was a company that had some of the best and hungriest talent in the entire world who worked a hard-hitting style of wrestling that appealed to more hardcore sensibilities. If you're a younger fan, many of your favorite wrestlers, whether in WWE, NXT, or even TNA at one point, made their name in Ring of Honor before going to more mainstream companies to make their money. Beginning in 2002, two of those names were Bryan Danielson and CM Punk. Nicknamed the American Dragon at one point, Danielson in particular quickly became the hottest North American wrestler outside of WWE. You can't really overstate it, he was amazing. He could work a submission style, he could do gnarly joint manipulation, he could kick a guy's head off, he could leap off the top rope and blast someone with a missile dropkick. He demanded your attention, was absolutely captivating, and I would argue rightfully held the title of best in the world in the eyes of many fans during this time period. To this day, in the eyes of some, Danielson is quite literally viewed as the best wrestler of all time. Now, I'm biased because I happen to be one of those people, but there's no denying that even if he's not on your Mount Rushmore, he's a truly special talent. Punk was similar in his ability to draw attention by connecting to fans who viewed themselves as outsiders or counterculturalists, and he was a damn good wrestler too, having some all-time classics that are still talked about today, namely against a reasonably well-known guy named Samoa Joe. Punk stayed with Ring of Honor until 2006, and Danielson stayed until 2009. Heck, Punk's last match in ROH was actually in a tag team with Danielson before Punk went off to make his money in the WWE. What I'm getting at is that Punk and Bryan were torchbearers of a pro wrestling counterculture. They were two of the most ardent and earnest performers of the 2000s and developed a passionate and loyal fan base that was grateful to watch wrestlers perform at their very peak in a style that was distinctly different from what was being offered on Raw and SmackDown. The only thing stopping Punk and Bryan from getting bigger than they were was that ROH didn't have the financial backing or a big enough platform to elevate them further, and they would never be legitimate competition for WWE. Never mind that the money you could make in ROH at the time was not comparable to what you could make working for Vince. So, at the age of 27, Punk went off to the Enemy, and Bryan did the same 3 years later at the age of 28. And you can't really fault them for it. Look, I'm not one of those fans who gets mad if a wrestler leaves a company that I enjoy. That's just dumb and unreasonable. From a wrestler's perspective, it's about knowing what you are worth and doing what you have to get the platform and make the money you deserve. and Punk and Bryan both did that. And now, 7 years later for Punk, and a few months out from the end of his WWE contract for Bryan, they are apparently signing on with another company that looks to be a lightning rod for wrestlers and wrestling fans who are tired of, or who are not getting what they want from WWE. And this isn't another ROH. This is a company with serious financial backing, a significant television deal, and an owner who is incredibly passionate and believes in letting wrestlers be themselves and to work in whatever style they see fit. And sure, you can argue that a wrestling company backed by a billionaire isn't really a counterculture product, but it is an alternative, and it is a promotion that is clicking with a great number of people and only seems to be gaining in momentum. So how can Punk and Bryan continue this momentum and potentially change the game? Well, consider that when Hulk Hogan walked out as the third man at Bash at the Beach in 1996, he did that in front of 8,300 people. If and when CM Punk walks out at the United Center on August 20th, 2021, he'll be doing it in front of well over 13,000 people, and if and when Bryan Danielson walks out at Arthur Ashe Stadium on September 22nd, 2021, he'll be doing it in front of over 17,000 people. Ironically, it is their time at WWE that has turned them into larger stars than they could ever have been in Ring of Honor, and they're now able to leverage that popularity to help bring a new company that much closer to taking a significant chunk of the public mindshare away from their former employer. Now look, I'm not saying that Daniel Bryan or Bryan Danielson and CM Punk are bigger draws than Hulk Hogan. Yes, the times and the circumstances are different, but Punk and Bryan are going to bring new eyes to AEW, and they will finally have the backing and the platform to make people take notice and realize that there is more than one way to do pro wrestling on North America's biggest stages, and that maybe, just maybe, they can help elevate the industry to a level we haven't seen in decades. But what do you think? How much of a difference can Punk and Bryan make in AEW? Let me know in the comments. And if you did enjoy this video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel, and turn on notifications. Until next time, thank you all so much for watching. I truly appreciate it.